Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning, held in partnership with Sun Chemical. My name is Michal Ledej. I'm the editor of FlexoTech magazine, and I'll be the host for this webinar titled Achieving Sustainability with ECG Printing, which will reveal how flexo printers can use an extended color gamut to create a more sustainable printed product. Before we begin the seminar, I just want to sort of set out what we mean by sustainability. When we talk about sustainability today, this isn't just about looking good or conscientious, that you're doing your part to save the world. This is about your bottom line and how you can serve brands better. This is about responding to the pressures your customers face, which is leading to businesses like yours reevaluating their practices. Being able to provide a more sustainable product than your competitors makes sense simply from a cold, hard business point of view. Because when it comes to the consumers who buy your customers' goods, they do care about trying to save the world. Brands today need to demonstrate how sustainable their products are, and this isn't something unique to the packaging industry. We've all seen the automotive, fashion, and travel industries trying to make big steps in helping to create a cleaner image to consumers, and packaging is a huge part of that narrative. The topic is everywhere, and if any of you have logged on to the virtual Drupal last month, you would have seen that 2 out of the 4 days had the theme circular economy, dedicating half the entire day's video stream to different versions of sustainability up and down the printing and packaging supply chain. It's a big topic and has been top of the agenda in our industry for years now. So every printer needs to have an answer for when their customer asks them, how sustainable are you? So on to the task at hand. I'm very excited to be able to welcome both Richard Hayden and David Harris with us this morning to talk about sustainability through an ECG printing production. Richard Hayden has worked at Sun Chemical since 1998, and during this time he has acquired extensive knowledge in the packaging workflow throughout the entire supply chain. David Harris has over 35 years experience in the graphics business, having worked for leading suppliers in the Prepress software such as PCC and Artwork systems on the development of systems for workflow and color management. But before I hand over to our speakers, I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions, please send them in via the question box beneath the video window in front of you. We'll leave some time after the presentation to have a little Q&A session. But right now, I will hand over to our speakers. Gentlemen, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you for the introductions, Michael, and hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be able to present this interesting topic to you today on ECG and sustainability. I think it's a very interesting topic for us, and it is going to be something that may affect the way that we look at producing packaging in future. So just to introduce you to the concept of ECG and sustainability, you'll hear us talk about extended color gamut printing, expanded color gamut printing. It's not a new concept. There's been previous initiatives in the industry like opal tone, hexachrome, etc. And the value proposition behind this is very well known, based on print quality, consistency. So what I think really has changed in the last, should we say, few years is the way we can now expand these benefits of ECG printing to the other areas, like further enhancing visual brilliance of an image. That's possible with the latest Prepress softwares. And because of technology advances in presses, stability, and even plate production, you can now print more branded spot colors than ever to move over to an extended gamut way of printing. Another aspect, I think, obviously, as Michael alluded to, is we're very aware at the moment of sustainability. So for us all as an industry to understand the environmental impact of printing and to improve on this aspect, to work towards a more circular economy. So I'd say, therefore, the focus of this webinar today is for you to understand they're always looking to renew and refresh their brands, which will lead to shorter production runs for you to be more flexible as a business, and for you to find that specific balance, I would say, between budget, speed, quality, and of course sustainability. So with that in mind, I want to sort of just introduce you to Sun Chemical's commitment on sustainability. So for Sun Chemical, we've developed this strategic roadmap and commitment to sustainability. And within this roadmap is what we call the 5 R's. And that is to do with reduce, reuse, recycle, redesign, and repurpose. So we're really looking with that to put sustainability at the forefront of our business practice. We're committed to reduce our carbon footprint and raise awareness about all the environmental issues in the many industries that we serve. Product stewardship and risk management are also important components of the policy. So by using a more analytical approach to the way we develop products to make sure that we are sustainable. And finally, being a global leader in sustainable, eco-efficient business practices. So that includes things like our factories, seeing our carbon footprint, looking at even transport of our products, and even business travel. I think over the last year, especially with the pandemic, we've seen business travel with the restrictions in place. All companies are now looking to see, will we return to that level of travel after the restrictions? Is it needed? So it really is something which is key at the moment. So now I'd like to introduce you to and hand over to David Howard of ESCO, who will take you through the next slide.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, so ESCO, along with our sister companies, X-Rite, Pantone, who are very well known in the graphics and colour business, ESCO in packaging. We're part of the Danaher Corporation, and as you can see on the slide I'm showing here, Danaher Corporate has a serious commitment to sustainability. It's particularly put into action in some of Danaher's other areas. They also operate in water quality and life sciences, where this is very much a topic, but that ethos does indeed go throughout the whole business, including us who work in packaging, and we apply it in the same way that Richard's been explaining to different facets of our business as well. So I'm very pleased to be talking to you about this topic today. If you want to know more about Danaher's commitment to sustainability, I've put the link there on the slide. So with that said, we've introduced ourselves, and Richard is now going to explain to you what is the link between sustainability and extended gamut, and how can extended gamut really contribute in this area.
Thank you, David. So as David said, just why is ECG a sustainable process? So as you can see initially listed on that slide, the primary reasons is that we look at a reduction in energy and waste. And all of those sort of points are covered below in more detail, where you can see the make-ready times between jobs that are reduced, because now you're only changing plates and cylinders in the press, you're not changing the inks. So this saves you time and money to start your production quicker. Faster to color is another aspect. With ECG, color matching is now all done in the prepress department when creating the separations for the plates to create a specific built color. Therefore, the ECG in the inks in the press should not actually be touched. They should stay as they are. Because of that, you'll have less storage space. You're not holding the ink inventory for many different spot color blends that you would possibly have before. You now only have the 5 or 6 or 7 colors from your ECG set of inks. That also leads on to less press returns. For that same reason, you've only got that limited set. And both these result in energy savings and cost reduction for your business. We touched on reduction in transport before. That's also another key point. Now, because obviously we're only delivering those 5, 6, 7 inks, we can do that in bulk. So that will reduce the level of transport needed, which is lower carbon footprint and emissions. And the last 2 points you can see listed there on the substrate waste and reduced solvent for washing are sort of a direct result to those earlier points, where you're saving in make ready times and being faster for color on the press. So I would say, especially with some of these recent supply chain issues that we've seen for raw materials, and even cost increases for things like solvents, this would definitely be sort of a key reason for us to look to reduce our use in those aspects. And just to introduce you to our, shall we say, our color management approach as Sun Chemical. This is what we call our Sun Color Box. It's our offering of a comprehensive solutions for all aspects of digital color management throughout the entire packaging workflow. And you can see there listed at the end the extended color gamut. It's a very big part of this Sun Color Box portfolio with our Sun ECG solution. So I'm sometimes asked by people sort of why we as Sun Chemical are promoting ECG, because they think, well, we could possibly make more money as an ink company by selling spot color inks rather than, you know, a mixed set of inks rather than just a set of 5 or 6, 7 colors. But the fact is, for us, we want to be that sort of best in class supplier for you. We want to bring you the latest technologies, and that we all work towards that sort of more sustainable process. Just to expand on our Sun ECG concept, what we like to do is we always sort of look to specify and recommend to you first monopigmented colors for this up to 7 color ink set. This is due to various reasons, technically, where blending pigments together to create your ECG set can actually add potential error stack in the process, which is what we don't want. And even it can reduce the overall gamut, which is achievable. We focus on printing to industry standards and specifications. For example, FOGRA or G7, depending on your location, for the process CMYK set. And there's no official standard yet, I would say, for ECG, but we follow the Flexo Trade Association guidelines to select the pigments based on hue angle for the orange, green, and violet that we add to the ink set. A key component to the ECG implementation is the prepress. As mentioned before, color matching should no longer be done on the press, but it's all based on pre-press separations. Therefore, we recommend utilizing the ESCO Equinox solution that you'll see of more later with David. Just jump into the top left point. We know that one of the key prerequisites for implementing ECG is stability and control of your entire production process. So now we have experts in our team that can review this. They can give you guidance. So, for example, study a certain press to see if it's stable enough to consider dedicating it to ECG printing. And also there's the opportunity to connect to other tools in our Sun Color Box portfolio. So we also have a gamut viewer software, so we can predict the amount of potential spot colors you can switch over from your current portfolio to migrate then to ECG. So you can see by this whole comprehensive approach we've developed, we're very serious about ECG and implementing this with you to ensure that we all achieve our sustainability goals. So with that in mind, I would like to hand you back to David so David can expand on some of those potential savings.
Yes, thanks, Richard. And in the last few years, ESCO has worked with a number of flexo printers in various fields, both labels, narrow web and wide web, on ECG projects using our Equinox software. And I'm just going to show you now a couple of examples of actual results that we got from customers who implemented ECG before, just to show you what you're likely to be able to achieve. So this first one is based on a printer in the narrow web flexo field. Because, as Richard explained earlier, you keep the same ink set on the press the whole time instead of changing the colors over. That means that make ready is much quicker, and you don't need to run as much material through during press changeovers and make readies. So the example here, they reduced by 34% the amount of substrate they had to run during make ready. So that obviously achieves the sustainability goal, as well as also improving the bottom line, because you're not paying for that scrap material being thrown away. And that didn't even take into account the ink that was being printed on those scrap rolls as well. Another example here about ink this time, and this is from the wide web flexo field, printing flexible packaging. This customer was saving 25% on the amount of ink they used when they switched from traditional printing to ECG. And that's simply because, as I'm sure you'd be aware, when you're changing inks, you've got to clean out the ink from the delivery system. There's a certain amount of unavoidable waste there, and over time, that all adds up. And that was a significant saving of 25%. And as I mention here as well, and I'm sure you all know this in the industry, that print runs are getting shorter and shorter. So this effect of waste here in changeovers, it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. So this is really something you need to think about, both from a sustainability point of view and also from an efficiency point of view, because these two topics go hand in hand. And then there's another way to improve efficiency as well and improve the result even further. And that's by combining jobs. Because you're keeping a fixed ink set on the press, it's much easier to combine different SKUs like you've got here. And they use different colors. So in the old days, you'd have had to mix up a different spot color for each one. You couldn't get all these colors on the press at the same time. So they'd have to be separate runs. But with ECG, you can simply gang them together in one run. So instead of 5 make readies, you've got only 1 make ready. And that makes a further drastic improvement on the waste material, and also very importantly for you, time spent on press, because a minute saved in make ready is a minute more you could use to print paying work on the press. So it not only improves sustainability, but also can help to increase your OEE of your presses. So, having introduced now what ECG is and some of the benefits, Richard is now going to take us through some of what you need to do to get into ECG printing.
Thank you, David. And I just want to really sort of emphasize the support that is required to run ECG. It is a very key topic. It can be very challenging for you to implement ECG. There's many things you have to consider. So for us, it's critical to develop a detailed implementation plan, to really sort of step-by-step approach to go through the whole process with you to make sure it is a success and that we hit all those sustainability goals with you. And then partnerships are very key. We like to work with the best-in-class people like ESCO to really get you the solution that you need to implement that ECG workflow. So all of these points are very, very key, and support is something that we really focus on as Sun Chemical to get you through this process. And just to show you how sort of serious and how detailed we need to be with this process is our mapped out approach. There's a lot of detail on this slide, so I won't go through every point with you, but it's just to illustrate the fact that this is very, very key to map this whole process. You can see the stage 1 setting in terms of looking at the press stability, defining the ink set, looking at the press in terms of also what tapes and plates you use. All that is considered. Then supporting you with the fingerprint exercise. That is the exercise where we really look at your press and fingerprint it in its optimum condition. Then stepping through to the confirmation phase, we need to then work with you with the confirming that the press is optimal and that we can then look to migrate and go into stage 4. So all these steps need to be done and managed very, very closely before we go to that migration where we work with the ESCO solution. So now with that in mind, I'll hand you back over to David, who can give you some information on the ESCO Equinox solution.
Yes, thanks, Richard. So as you could see here on the slide, there's quite a lot to think about when you're implementing ECG, and the key is to have a good plan and the right support, information and tools. And you'll be pleased to know that although there is a lot to think about, ESCO and Sun have already worked together successfully with many customers and gone through this plan and achieved great results. Now, part of what you need here is a solution for prepress, where ESCO can offer tools for profiling the press, for proofing to make sure you can produce an accurate contract proof in advance of going on press, and also for converting jobs. In a webinar like this, I'm not going to be able to show you every one of those many tools, but I'm going to give you one example now, which is showing software for converting jobs from traditional process and spot setup in Prepress to get the artwork ready for ECG. And I'm going to do that with a software demo inside of ESCO's ArtPro Plus PDF native editor product. So what you can see here is a typical packaging job that you might get the artwork in. It contains a Pantone separation, which we're looking at here. It has a named spot color called pomegranate, that kind of pink color, CMYK process, and a opaque white complete the job. We'll just take a closer look at the initial makeup of the job using the densitometer tool in ArtPro Plus, so we can see a block percentage of Pantone there, solid spot color over there, and spot color and image over printed just there in the middle. So to convert for ECG with Equinox, we select the object you want to convert, all of them in this case, or you can make a selection. Go into the Equinox dialog and select your color strategy, which maps to the particular press profile you're going to use. You can see here we're going to convert to a 7-color plus white ink set. The white is kept. It's set up already because you don't want to convert that. And you can see the delta E you're going to achieve for the colors. One click and the conversion is done, and we'll just check now how the artwork's made up. So we've got a mixture of magenta and yellow up there over the white, where there used to be that spot color in Pantone. The solid pomegranate is also converted to magenta yellow orange mix, and further down here you can see that overprinted image is also converted to ECG. So you've rebuilt the job from process and spot into your fixed separations that you're going to use for printing in future. And then all you need to do is save out the file, the PDF file, and that could go forward into ripping and plate making to get it ready for print. So that's an example. Just one thing I mentioned there as well, you can see in the tool what you're going to get, both in terms of delta E, and also the observant of you would have noticed that although I selected a 7-color strategy, you won't need to make all 7 plates in the case of this job because there's no green needed, for example. The software deals with all of that automatically. So now I've shown that, I'm going to talk to you then a little bit more about plate making, which would be the next step after creating the modified artwork. Now, Richard's mentioned already in his talk earlier about the workflow, the importance of press stability. It's a great thing that I'm sure you bear in mind anyway, and it's particularly important in any kind of color managed process, because in color management, you make a profile of your press, and you're then depending on the fact that your press remains reasonably within typical production parameters, reasonably stable to that profile. And then you're going to have press matching proof and good output. Well, a lot's happened in the industry over the past years, like Richard actually mentioned already in his introduction, to make the implementation of ECG and color managed workflows in general much more achievable. And there have been developments in plate making that I'd like to mention there, because that's one of the things I've been involved with over last years at ESCO, even going back to when we produced HD Flexo, which was a step forward, and now further into XPS plates. These are plates that are imaged using a specific kind of digitally controlled UV exposure rather than a traditional backlight frame. And what we found is that these are much more stable on press than traditional plates. And furthermore, we now have an application called Print Control Wizard, which helps to tune the right screening for the plates, which further improves stability and also means that you get great tonal response on the plates, which is furthermore very important for process color printing like ECG. Here's a couple of customer testimonials mentioning what they've done with these plates. So much more consistent, less stress on the plates, longer lasting plates. Yet another impact on sustainability there actually, because longer lasting plates means fewer plates going into the trash. And by the way, running the press a bit faster as well, which is always a benefit. So that's something you can do as part of a project. Also bring the plate making up to scratch. Now, another benefit that we've seen with using XPS plates and crystal screens is the performance of these plates allows customers to use smaller volume analogues on print. Now, doing that means you're going to use less ink, and it also means that you'll have finer screening capability, so therefore smoother prints, which particularly matters when you're running a lot more tone work, which you will be doing with ECG. ECG, as you know, it's a process system, builds your colors out of tones, so tone work is going to become a lot more important. But using the right screening will let you get great tone work, less ink, more stability on press, and still achieve a good density, because density is also important. Without a good density, you won't get the rich color gamut that you need to convert your spot colors to ECG and enabling the whole process we've been talking about in the first place. So that's just something else to think about, as well as having the right prepress tools, also thinking about how you can look at other factors on the press, such as the plate making, the analogues, to really make sure that your ECG project is a success and gives the best quality and sustainability and efficiency benefits all in one package. So, Richard, please now could you sum up where we are in the presentation?
Yes, thank you, David. So just to summarize what we've covered today in the webinar, ECG is not a new concept, but we feel that technology has advanced in terms of the machines, the inks, the plates, the software, to ensure that that platform success is stronger. We believe that that is all in place now to make this a real viable solution for your business. You've seen there's tangible benefits to improve the sustainability credentials by implementing ECG. So remember, it's achieving that balance between the productivity, the cost, and the sustainability aspect. And I hope you've understood that with the ever-changing market of print, with the focus to move towards faster production, rotation of brand designs, shorter press runs, speed to market, and a trend for all of those aspects, that ECG really does fit this approach. And finally, we know that implementing ECG can be a challenge. So with Sun Chemical and ESCO, we've got the expertise, the products, the solutions, the application know-how, and also the unique tools to make this a success for your business, and for all of us to work towards that more sustainable future in print. So thank you for your time today, and I hand you back over to Michael for the last part.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you very much. That's really good. A lot of good points there, and really hard to sort of argue against implementing an ECG production. We have got some questions. I just want to start off. You alluded, Richard, to, you know, it can be a bit disruptive for a printer to implement this, especially the nature of a flexo printer. You know, they don't want the press to stop. We've got jobs stacked end to end. So, you know, just without wanting to put anyone off, you know, how difficult can the transition be? Is it very different from what most printers are doing at the moment?
For what we like to do is like to say, yes, we can't. ECG is not, shall we say, the ultimate answer. It's not the final solution to all the print problems. What we do when we go to customers, we look and say, can you dedicate maybe one of your presses? So you might have 2 or 3 presses in your operation. Can you maybe look to switch, and do you have enough work to switch over to a full, or dedicate one full press to produce an ECG? So it's not just, yeah, we know it's a challenge to migrate the operation, but we don't change the whole operation. We look at doing it maybe, yeah, one press at a time. You need to be able to have that flexibility, because you're not going to be able to print every color with ECG. There's still going to be the standard traditional spot color CMYK type printing. So it's very much the way we work is we assess that whole setup at the start with you through that service to where we do the consulting, and we make sure we get the right solution that fits for your business and build that transition plan with you. So it does not affect the production every day that you do.
Yeah, if I might add something there as well, please, Mikhail. So one of the business sayings we have at Danaher is we don't let perfect get in the way of better. So one of the things we do find when engaging with customers in an ECG project is that they start with a target of just converting a certain percentage of their production from traditional to ECG. It could be 30%, 40% of the production to convert within the first 6 to 12 months. Now, this will have a huge impact, positive impact, of course, I hasten to add, while still not setting the bar so high that you think you have to do everything. You don't. You can achieve great results and great savings by choosing your battles carefully and converting the right part of the work first of all, and then progressing to the other part later on, once you've got some success under your belt and some part of the production is running ECG.
So is it more of an ongoing project? I mean, do you have a timeline, say, if someone wanted to start today, pick up the phone today to one of you two, what sort of timeline would they be looking at before they could be running a job ECG?
I think it's very much dependent on, again, the scenario, the what type of work they do. So we go through that whole process, that implementation process and that consulting phase to really establish timelines. It can be different for many people. Again, it's a challenge. So it's a very much a partnership by everyone involved to put together that time frame that they want to try and work towards, and we'll do our best to do that. It can be, as I said, a challenge, but as long as we have that implementation process in place and we will follow that, then we can turn around things quite quickly.
Okay, excellent. And David, I just wanted to ask you about the clip you showed about the pre-press demo. It looked very slick, looked very easy. Is that sort of a standard thing that most pre-press operators could do?
Well, there's always something new to learn with a new process, and you do have to take care how you convert jobs, like you always do in Prepress for Flexo. So that's why we recommend customers to use a high-end Prepress editor to begin with, manually converting jobs like I showed, and then reviewing the results and maybe making some adjustments. We do have quite a few customers, by the way, who, having done that for certain pieces of work, then after maybe 6 months or 12 months, can migrate some part of the conversion in Prepress from an editor like I showed there, where you work with each artwork one at a time, to an automated workflow where you apply effectively a kind of a script in a workflow to each file, and you just check for exceptions. I wouldn't advise anyone in the Flexo field to start that way until you've got quite some experience and explored the space of your particular artworks you're working on. We see people using digital print or offset going more automated from the start, because you could say those processes are a bit more forgiving sometimes of the way the artwork's made up. But we do have Flexo customers as well using workflow conversion tools, but not from the outset. Another key, of course, which I mentioned briefly, but come back to, is the importance of proofing. So make sure you have a proofing system which can accurately reflect what you're going to get on press. The color management is linked between your editor and your proofing system so that you know you're going to get the same results. And that's particularly important at the beginning to build confidence that you know what you've made in pre-press is going to be what comes out on press, both within your internal team and, of course, very importantly, with your customers who want to know what they're going to get in the new print.
Excellent, thank you. A couple more questions that we've had come through. There's been a question about how or do you limit the number of color channels used to match a stop or a PMS color?
I'll take that one then, if that's all right. So what you saw in the example I gave there was a conversion in the prepress editor using Equinox. Now, that won't use unnecessary color channels anyway. So what you saw there is that it looked at the Pantones or other colors that were in the job. It worked out already from the color strategy the best way to build those out of the ECG set. And because it didn't have any need for certain inks, then it just didn't make plates for those. But there's a lot of other ways you can do it. I didn't include a demo of that today, but ESCO has information on, could show you those. But we've got an application called Color Pilot, where you can pre-build and optimize the conversions for your Pantones or any other spot colors towards your particular press and ink conditions, and you can review all those builds. One of the things it does is you can define smart rules. So, for example, maybe the color management would, out of the box, think I could get the most accurate color by putting in 2% of orange there. But when a human looked at that, you'd think, what's the point of making an extra plate there just to put 2% orange in? What if I take that 2% out, don't have an orange plate, I maybe increase the delta E of that color by 0.5? Well, I'd rather do that and save a plate. Well, you don't have to do all that manually, because you can set up a rule in software which will look at that and say, oh, if the delta E is less than 1, say, for example, or whatever you want to put, then just take that plate out and don't do it. And you can always review those builds manually in Color Pilot as well if you want to, and optimize them. And then once you've saved them in what we call a color strategy, that's effectively a rule set that you can then apply automatically to jobs quite easily in the editor. So yes, there are tools for that. Explaining them fully beyond the scope of what we can do here in a couple of minutes, but I hope I gave you a flavor.
I think I can add just another thing to that as well, David, is when we look at sometimes customers' portfolios and maybe they haven't got a press which they can dedicate, 7 units to the ECG set. So we can run, as part of the consulting phase or the exploratory phase, fingerprints, test runs to see maybe if you've only got 6 units, do you maybe just take the CMYK orange and green, or maybe the CMYK orange and violet? Which one gives you the gamut that you need to then map into maybe some of your key customer spot colors? So which one fits correctly for your business based on, the amount of units you have on your press, or the type of work that you're trying to reproduce and move to ECG. So we can do all that work up front with the tools, like David said, to really see and consult you on which path forward is best for you in terms of the ink set you might achieve as well.
Okay. Someone's trying to make a comparison to sort of a different process. It says some CMYK inksets for other print processes, such as offset and digital, offer a similar wider color gamut to the CMYK OGV ECG option. Is this should or can Flexo take this option?
Well,
I think
what
that's
would you
yeah,
say from an ink point of view, Richard?
yeah, again, we're working to, as we presented, we're working to sort of the industry standards for the CMYK OGV part. So we would always recommend to work towards those for the references, and it is almost like turning your Flexo press into a digital press. That's what a lot of like ECG is. You're running just the 7 colors, very much like a digital press. So the ink sets would be aligned to those industry standards to be able to reproduce that, the maximum gamut achievable.
And so there's no reason why, some of the colors could be dropped out for certain runs, put in for others.
Yeah, we recommend, obviously, it's almost like for us, we recommend to go with this certain ink set, but again, for the reasons we said, we recommend the monopigmented. So to maybe stop the error stack or some issues that maybe come from blending inks to create specific gamuts, that can be slightly dangerous and affect the stability of the whole process. But we're always, again, we can explore those with certain press runs, tests beforehand to see the impact of that.
Okay. Just trying to allocate a few more questions. See if we've got time. I think we do. Let's just have a look here. So I've seen the growth in conventional print life, and now see this growing with digital. Can we profile a press room and use ECG spot color pack to enable the crossover from Flexo to digital? What are your thoughts on the merger between both mediums?
I'll comment on that one to begin with. So indeed, I think that profiling presses using kind of process we described, which you have to do for ECG, does make it easier to match between different kinds of press technologies. Because in the end, if you've got all your processes stabilized and profiled, then you can always use color management to remake your job for whatever process you're going to. So say you want to make the same job on digital, you'll profile that. You can use color management software like a color server or the color management in the DFE of the digital press to convert it. You could take the same original job and put that through an Equinox process and get it matching as close as is possible within the limitations of the press on your digital press. And it's simpler to do that with a color managed process like ECG than it is if, for example, your conventional press is running in spot colors and your digital is in process. I've seen that be done at quite a few customers already by now. So definitely confirmed from real world experience.
Okay. Another question here: can the analogues of a traditional print setup be used for ECG?
Traditional, yes, traditional is fine. We can do all that as part of the exploration, the study we do on the presses. We look at the customer's setup. We run those tests before we even say to you, yes, we think under these conditions you can move over to an ECG workflow. So all that is part of our the first phase of when we look at a customer, and we take their standard workflows, see if we have to maybe adapt them, or if we don't have to, hopefully not. But if they've got that in place, we can run all the exploratory test print runs to make sure that that press is under those conditions is stable enough, or again advise to make changes to to make sure that they can do this in future?
Yes, indeed. It depends. Like that's really the answer. Like Richard has said, what you can certainly say is that, for example, an analogues you use today for solid spot work, that would typically be high volume, low frequency. You can't use that then as a process analogues for, say, your new orange ECG color. You're probably going to need something different for that. But the right thing is to look at what you've got, do an audit, and then have the recommendations. But it's really down to the volume and resolution of the analogues.
Okay. Is ECG something you'd recommend to printers who are switching from a different process, such as gravure or offset, and they're coming to Flexo for the first time?
Yes, I would. That's a good question, actually. But yes, I would. The reason being, well, one is I've seen people do that successfully, but also if it's a complete Flexo is a completely new process, then you could say, well, why not start with ECG, which gives you the most flexibility, as we've heard, in what jobs you run, how you combine jobs. So why not start there rather than start with process and spot and then later on think, oh, actually, now I've got to change to ECG now, or now I want to change to ECG. Start with ECG from the beginning. I've seen a number of major printers do that, and even set up complete factories which were built from the start around ECG, where you've got no ink kitchen in house. All you've got is 7 big tanks of ink on the outside that you fill up with your CMYK orange, green, violet. The tanker comes in, just fills them up, and everything was designed around ECG. Usually, the transition from gravure to Flexo is all about being more agile, optimizing for shorter turnaround times, shorter print runs, things like that. And ECG will only help you with that. Make sure you think about your plate technology as well while you're doing that. Again, in a new project, start with the best or the right stuff. So I mentioned the importance of plate technology earlier. So think about that, because having that will help you to achieve again the right densities in Flexo in a transition like gravure to Flexo. Gravure, as you'll all know, is known for achieving great densities, which were hard to do in Flexo until recently, but developments in inks, in analogues, and in plates have made that much more feasible.
Yeah. I would say if you're going to, if you're going to buy a new press, or you've got a new Flexo press today, that it would be very sensible to consider just implementing ECG from the start, because, as we said, the presses, the new technology on the presses, they're ensuring their stability, which is key to this process. There's automated control on these new presses, so that they're in such a good stable environment that it really does lend itself to ECG printing. So that would be the way that I would approach, especially if I was going to have a new Flexo press, for example.
Okay. A question here, sort of relating to a bit further down the supply chain. Do you know if there are any UK retailers which are backing ECG as a production form?
There
There are some out there that are obviously considering ECG. Yeah. Come on, David.
I know. Yeah, well, I know that there are, and also not only ECG with 7 inks, but also CMYK process printing is being used by some retailers. So that's not quite the same, but very closely related. Of course, I'm not able to mention any names.
Okay, yes, fair enough. I guess, how well is it? Are you able to communicate that down the chain with designers and brands as well? I know that communication between printers and brands can sometimes be a little bit difficult because they're coming from different aspects of the job. Is it easy to communicate these benefits?
Well, we see different approaches at different places, but one of the things that seems to often work very well is when a printer and a brand can do this in partnership and share the benefits. Obviously, there's efficiency gains there. There's sustainability gains, which is why we're here, which brand wants to see. There's the, probably an improved workflow where the brand can order in smaller quantities and have more kind of just-in-time, reduced inventory. So there's benefits on both sides, and a partnership like that is very effective. Then you've got to think about the communication from a design point of view. The design will look different. Some colors, depending on the gamut of your press, may not be quite the same. There's good ways to communicate that, both digitally. We can create tables of colors showing you what you're going to get. Printers also sometimes make color tests or swatch prints. Well, they'll take, for example, a brand's palette and just print that in ECG. Once you're set up for ECG, by the way, one of the benefits is printing a swatch book like that is relatively easy, because you haven't got to mix up 100 inks, for example, to match the brand's palette. You've just got to pre-press a job with 100 color builds and then put that on press. So visual communication of color, I don't need to tell you, is very important. When the designer can see that, that's great. And of course, think of the positive side. Once you go ECG, it actually frees the designer up. No more limitations on, say, I can only use a maximum of 3 colors plus process in this job or whatever, because actually you can use as many colors as you like, as long as they fit within the gamut, because that's not going to affect the press anymore. Not suggesting you should use too many colors, by the way, from a design point of view. From aesthetically, that might not be great, but it does actually free the hand of the designer. And as Richard actually mentioned in the intro, and we didn't talk very much about that today, but it's another benefit of ECG, you can also enhance the imagery. So from a design point of view, by adding, say, some green into some of your natural images or food images, you can make those more lifelike, have some more stand out on the shelf, and that benefits the designer as well. So there's reasons for everybody to come to the party and get involved collaboratively in making a project work.
Okay, I think we might have time for one last question. Typically, what delta E would you expect in your ECG spot colors?
Yeah, do you want to have a go at that one, Richard, or you go first and I'll...
Yeah. Again, that's difficult to quantify because it is down to control of your process. So if you've got if you think now with it's so key to manage your production and ensure that each unit of that press is as stable as possible, because now you're not just to be able to produce a color, you're building it one on top of the other. So you're producing, or sorry, I should say, you're controlling maybe 3 or 4 units on your press. They all have to be completely stable to be able to control that color. any drift in one of those is going to affect the color that you see at the end of the output. So it is very much down to how well that production or that each unit of the press is controlled. But that's the thing that we can map out in the process and understand that variation and see really what is achievable from a reproduction point of view when we do all the tests, to give you that indication of what can I achieve. Maybe there's some of these customers where the brand owner, their color is maybe not quite as stringent in terms of delta E of what they require. So could we move that particular brand color over to ECG, because then maybe they might accept a little bit more variation. So all those things have to be considered when we look at this whole project.
Okay, I think that might be all we have time for today. We've got a lot more questions, but what I'll try and do is maybe get some of those answered in the magazine, the next issue of the magazine. So if you haven't registered for the magazine, do it now, and you might see your question appear in the mag. David, Richard, thank you both very, very much for your participation today. Very interesting discussion, as you can tell, as I can tell from the amount of questions we've got coming in all about it. So such a great topic to talk about, and you know, when each printer has to make their own mind about their printing process, but the ability to add an extra, you know, string to your bow in terms of being able to run a sustainable process with ECG, it's really difficult to think why you wouldn't at least want to try and implement an ECG production. So real good food for thought there. So thank you both, and thank you everyone for joining. And I think I have to leave you there. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.